Picture this: the English countryside of Wiltshire, and colorful specks of skydivers float gracefully back to Earth. For these thrill seekers, skydiving represents the ultimate freedom. Those few precious moments when nothing exists but you and the rushing air. When all of life's complications are suspended. But on April 5th, 2015, that sense of freedom was about to transform into something far more sinister. So stow your tray tables, fasten your seatbelts, and prepare for a mystery at 4,000 feet. Because on this episode of Final Boarding Call, we're examining the perplexing case of a skydive gone terribly wrong. Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Welcome to Final Boarding Call.
I feel like I sit here every time, but...
I am still your disaster-obsessed host, Alice.
And I'm Zach, much less reluctant when we record these things in the day.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Before we dive in, do we have anything we want to say to the people?
I just love to remind everybody, as it's my job, to please like, rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
I love that. Alrighty, let's real quick go through sources. There are a few podcasts that have covered this episode. There is Love Murder, which you know that I love Murder. There's also an A Trial by Podcast episode, and they did a two-parter of this story, and it was excellent. So those are the sources for this bad boy. It's a whole lot of podcast episodes, because I love true crime podcasts. This is a nuts one, a little bit of a departure from what we typically do, still in our lane, because technically
Plane.
skydiving is a form of transportation.
And it requires a plane to get there.
It requires a plane to get there. You gotta take a plane. Still aviation. And you are going from one place to another in a fashion where things can go terribly wrong. So.
Maybe even more so than other ways.
Well, you know, let's talk about it. You guys are about to learn something about skydiving, which is, I think, going to be fun and cool. April in England. You have sunshine one moment, clouds the next. April 5th, 2015 was no exception, with shifting skies over Netheravon airfield. I'm just going to say it fast enough and then nobody will question me.
It's a good thing we can edit these.
With shifting skies over Netheravon airfield in Wiltshire, forcing skydivers to wait patiently for their chance to jump. For 40-year-old Victoria Cilliers, this was familiar territory. With over 2,000 jumps under her belt, she knew that patience was part of the sport. I know, 2,000 jumps.
I guess I can't do it because I am not that patient.
As an Army physiotherapist and qualified freefall instructor, she was accustomed to the rhythms of a jump day. The preparation, the waiting, that brief surge of adrenaline, and then the peaceful descent. Kind of sounds like a race day. Do you really? I still get a little bit of an adrenaline rush when I'm waiting grid to go out on track.
The extent of mine is feeling like I have to pee right before.
But something felt different about this jump. Victoria couldn't quite place it, but an unusual sense of unease had been following her all day. Earlier jumps had been canceled due to weather, and she had nearly packed up and gone home to her two young children, 3-year-old April and newborn Ben, who was just a few weeks old. That's a baby.
She's jumping after a couple of weeks? Good for her.
I raced cars when Ari was 2 weeks old. When you love something and you are stupidly passionate about it, you do the dumb thing.
I just feel like that shock to the vaginal area of your harnesses when that parachute deploys might be a little bit harder on her than the sitting in a race car. Granted, slamming the brakes and doing all that stuff will still jolt to your stomach, hip area, but I picture discomfort in the nether regions if I was wearing a skydiving harness.
Okay. Thank you, Zach, for your expert analysis. However, just like when I was feeling a little uneasy about getting right back on track after giving birth, it was her husband, Emil, who really encouraged her to get back on that horse. Or in this case, strap on into that harness. And she decided to stay and wait for the conditions to improve. Now, she knelt at the open door of the aircraft. She looked down at the patchwork of fields below from 4,000 feet, which actually is a little bit lower than a typical skydiving jump. Like when I did my skydiving, we were much higher than 4,000 feet. And Victoria tried to push her anxiety aside, right? Maybe that weird feeling that she was having was just nerves at getting back on it after a 9-month break for pregnancy and childbirth. The overcast sky had finally cleared enough for a low altitude jump. It wasn't ideal, but it was workable for somebody with her experience. With one deep breath, she launched herself into the open sky. Obviously, this is not a tandem jump because she is like hella experienced.
It could still be a tandem jump then with somebody
I
else.
mean, I go, but she's going solo. She's by herself, which I don't think I could ever solo skydive because the only reason I was able to do it in the first place is because the guy that I was tandeming with pushed me outside of the plane. I was like those videos of like wet kittens that you're trying to put in a bath and they're like full spread on the sink doing everything they can to not get in the water. That was me exiting the plane. Woof. For a brief moment, everything felt normal. The familiar rush of wind, the slight disorientation that quickly gives way to a skydiver's awareness of their position relative to the ground. Then came the moment for her to deploy her main parachute. Victoria pulled the ripcord, expecting that reassuring jolt as the canopy caught air. Instead, she felt an uneven, sickening lurch. Looking up, she saw her main parachute had deployed, but the lines were terribly twisted. Line twists aren't uncommon in skydiving. They happen when the canopy inflates unevenly, causing the suspension lines to get tangled. Experienced jumpers are trained to handle them by using body weight, actually, to kick out of the twist, allowing the lines to straighten. How is that for some air parkour? Parkour! But as Victoria attempted this standard recovery technique, she quickly realized that something was seriously wrong. This was not just a normal tangle in the lines. The canopy was not responding as it should. Instead of smoothing out, the twists seemed to be getting worse, and the parachute was beginning to spin violently. In skydiving, when your main parachute fails, you have mere seconds to make a life or death decision. The protocol is typically this. You cut away the main chute, and you deploy your reserve chute. This is why skydivers always jump with 2 parachutes, because redundancy, drink, is built into skydiving. Okay, the failure of a main canopy should be inconvenient, but not fatal. Victoria didn't hesitate. She cut away the malfunctioning main parachute, watching it flutter away as she reached for her reserve handle. This was the moment where everything logically should have been okay. Reserve parachutes are packed by certified riggers. They are inspected regularly, and they are designed to open quickly and reliably. But as Victoria pulled the reserve handle, horror replaced confidence. The reserve canopy emerged from its container, but only partially inflated. One side opened weakly, while the other flapped uselessly in the wind, sending her into a violent spin. In those terrifying moments, as Victoria plummeted towards the earth, She tried every emergency procedure that she had ever learned, but nothing worked. The ground rushed up to meet her at over 100 miles per hour. At 4:27 p.m., Victoria slammed into a freshly plowed field with devastating force. James Rankin, a fellow skydiver who had jumped before Victoria and witnessed her desperate struggle from the ground, sprinted across the field to where she had landed. He expected to find the worst. No one survives an impact at that speed. When emergency responders arrived, they brought equipment for what logically would be a recovery operation rather than a rescue. What they found in the field would mark the beginning of one of the most unusual investigations in British criminal history. As emergency crews worked at the crash site, investigators from the British Parachute Association, pretty cool.
It's a weird job to get into.
Investigators from the British Parachute Association began their routine examination of Victoria's equipment. What they discovered immediately transformed this from a tragic accident into something far more sinister. Both Victoria's main and reserve parachutes were missing their slinks, which is a critical component that connects the parachute canopy to the harness. Without these vital connections, the parachutes could never function properly, no matter how skillfully the jumper deployed them. This was not equipment failure. This was sabotage. Let's jump ahead and talk about the investigation and talk about how Victoria ended up in this field. I'll use that as a segue as we hop into. Don't worry, we'll get back to the field, but we got to figure out how we got here in the first place. Detective Inspector Paul Franklin of the Wiltshire Police was called in, and his assessment was stark. In my 30 years of policing, I've never come across a case like this. Between 2005 and 2014, there were approximately 2.3 million parachute jumps in the UK without a single incident where both main and reserve parachutes failed, end quote. Victoria's reserve parachute had been inspected 16 times by 10 different highly trained packers since it was manufactured. The odds of both parachutes failing simultaneously by chance were essentially zero. That shit just ain't happening. Someone had wanted Victoria dead. But who would want to kill a 40-year-old physiotherapist and mother of 2 young children?
Only a husband.
You must be married to a true crime fan, honey.
It just also doesn't make a lot of logical sense. There's no way she's out there developing a bunch of enemies. So the only person that could be angry with her is a significant other. And yes, statistics, it's always the spouse.
To answer that question, just ask Zach or point to the investigators because they need to understand Victoria's life. And so do we, because we're going to help solve this mystery.
I already did.
If that's even what you want to call it. Born in Edinburgh, Scotland, in 1975, Victoria had discovered skydiving through a charity jump after her mother died of cancer when Victoria was only 16. The exhilaration of freefall had given her a sense of freedom during a very difficult time, and she was instantly hooked. After training as a physiotherapist, Victoria joined the British Army, eventually becoming a captain. She's a badass. She continued pursuing her passion for skydiving, becoming a qualified freefall instructor, and accumulating thousands of jumps. Victoria had been married once before to a military man named Liam, but the relation had ended amicably due to the challenges of maintaining a long-distance military marriage. In 2009, she met Emile Cilliers, a physical training instructor in the Royal Artillery, when he came to her for treatment on an injured knee. Bow, bow, bow. Okay. Emil told Victoria that he had 2 children from a previous relationship that had ended, and after a whirlwind romance, they married in South Africa, where Emil's family lived. They now had 2 children together, a daughter named April and a newborn son named Ben, who was just weeks old at the time of Victoria's jump. On the surface, they seemed like a happy military family. But as investigators peeled back the layers of their marriage, troubling details emerged. Victoria's friends described Emil as charming but controlling. That's not how you want your friends to describe your spouse.
It be that way.
How do you think my friends would describe you?
The nicest guy they've ever met. So patient.
Probably true.
Probably
true. There were also whispers of financial troubles and marital tensions. Just 1 week before the parachute incident, something strange had happened at the family home. Victoria had discovered a gas leak from a pipe feeding into the kitchen stove. Near the loosened valve was what appeared to be dried blood. When she texted Emil about it, his response raised eyebrows in retrospect. That is weird. Is the stove working?
There's a gas leak.
Why is that funny?
Go ahead and try to light the stove. Send a spark off where there's been a gas leak.
Victoria hadn't tried the stove, fearing that it would indeed cause an explosion in her house.
And it would.
Instead, she called a gas technician who found and fixed the loose connection. At the time, Victoria had jokingly texted Emil, "Are you trying to kill me?" He responded very defensively.
How could you even ask me that? What is the matter with you?
But she dismissed it. Now, in light of the parachute sabotage, investigators were connecting dots and formed a disturbing picture. Could these 2 incidents be connected? And if so, who had both the motive and the opportunity to make 2 attempts on Victoria's life within a single week? As investigators continued their work, they began following a trail that would lead to the heart of Victoria's marriage and reveal secrets that would shock even the hardened detectives. Let's meet Emil.
I could really go for a meal right now, too. Hungry.
As with any investigation, my love, detectives needed to consider all possible suspects. Could Victoria have tampered with her own parachute in a suicide attempt?
Possible.
This theory was quickly dismissed. Victoria had a newborn baby and a 3-year-old daughter that she adored. Now, obviously, we're not saying that just because of those things that automatically means that somebody is not experiencing suicidal thoughts or ideations.
Kids are hard.
Yes, kids are extremely hard. Postpartum depression, I went through it. It's no joke. However, there were other indicators in Victoria's life that showed that she was not experiencing postpartum depression to a level of suicidal ideations. Friends described her as loving motherhood. I don't think somebody could have described that of me when I had a newborn. I'm going to be honest. Yeah, Zach's shaking his head. Nope. Surviving motherhood is probably the tagline I would have used. And despite some challenges in her marriage, she was looking forward to the future. More definitively, the technical expertise required to remove the slinks in the specific way that they had been removed made self-harm implausible. What about other skydivers? Right? Did she make some enemies in the sky?
Doubt it. Sounds like she keeps to herself.
After interviewing dozens of fellow jumpers, absolutely no motive emerged. Victoria was universally well-liked and respected in the community. As investigators continued their work, their focus increasingly turned to those closest to Victoria, particularly
her 3-year-old.
The 3-year-old.
Who knew? He grabbed a pipe wrench, loosened up the gas fitting, and tried to kill his mother.
Honestly, would I put it past our 3-year-old?
She could do it. But
There are times when she looks at me and I'm like, I need to sleep with one eye open over M&Ms.
yeah.
You know, you give this kid 8 M&Ms instead of 10 and you're dead to me.
Until you get me more.
Until you get me more M&Ms. Okay. Spoiler alert, folks. It was actually not the 3-year-old, but they are paying very close attention to her husband.
Oh, forgot about him.
Emil. At first glance, Emil appeared to be the model husband. And I mean that literally. He is handsome. He is fit. He is seemingly devoted to his family. But as detectives began looking into his background, the facade began to crumble.
He was wanted for murder once before.
Holy shit, that'd be nuts.
Cleared on a technicality.
Oh my gosh. Wow, you should write true crime books, honey bun.
Would that be a true crime or would that be one that I just made up?
No, I guess you're right. I guess it's fiction. It wouldn't be true crime if it's a fake crime, but you get what I'm saying. This facade of the perfect husband began to crumble, revealing a web of concerning details. Emil had significant financial problems, with mounting debts to payday lenders, banks, and even colleagues. His
wife had a large life insurance policy because she liked to do crazy things.
This man is bad at money. Right. He's not good with the monies. His spending habits were extravagant compared to his income. And he seemed perpetually short of cash despite his and Victoria's combined military salaries. Like, they are not a low-income household, but he is ballin' like they're in that top tax bracket.
I'm not sure what other countries make in the military, but here, combined military incomes, they've got to be making like $40 a month.
You're cute.
USA.
She is a captain. She's doing
USA.
Okay. More troubling still, investigators discovered that Emil had been taking out loans in Victoria's name without her knowledge. That is such a red flag. That's a terrible
I've only
thing
done that
to do.
twice since we've been married.
Cool. When confronted by his wife about mysterious withdrawals from her account, he had claimed her accounts must have been hacked.
It was a hacker.
I don't know if I've ever told you the story of the Tinder swindler. I would love to find a way to tie it into this podcast, but I don't think it's going to be possible. But there's a guy who basically worked the Tinder circuit, and he literally swindled a bunch of women into giving him a ton of money. And whenever he needed money from them, he would always say, "My enemies. I need to protect myself from my enemies." And that's what this is reminding me of, that her accounts had been hacked by this mysterious enemy. Victoria had recently changed her will to ensure that her assets would go directly to her children, not Emil. Suggesting that she may have had that sense that something was going on.
And she may have even been planning to leave him already.
Then there was the life insurance policy.
Always.
Emil had taken out coverage on Victoria worth £120,000. And let me do a real quick thing because I didn't actually research how much that would be. Okay, let's see. So that to US dollar is about $162,000. However, this was in 2015, so just take that with a little bit of an asterisk.
Before the mountain high inflation of the world.
Woof. So that would have provided a substantial financial windfall in the event of her death. But perhaps most damning was the opportunity. The day before Victoria's jump, Emil had accompanied her to the parachute center with their children. So the whole family is taking a cute little trip over to the parachute center. Their daughter, the 3-year-old, God, we know this story, needed to use the restroom. And when your 3-year-old says, "I need to go potty,"
you pull over on the side of the road and
get
do it.
that child to a potty. So, when their daughter needed to use the bathroom, Emil had volunteered to take her, which seems like a really sweet, good dad thing to do. He was carrying Victoria's newly rented parachute over his shoulder. They had been gone for somewhere between 5 to 10 minutes.
Seems like a long potty break for a
That
child.
seems like a long-ass potty break.
Ours goes in there and pushes with all her force and is done in about 2 seconds.
So true. This is plenty of time for somebody with knowledge of parachute equipment to remove the critical slinks. The parachute had been stored overnight in Victoria's locker at Emil's suggestion, rather than being returned to the kit store, as would be the normal procedure. Still, this was all as the...
Circumstantial.
Yep. This is entirely circumstantial evidence, all of it. Investigators needed more concrete evidence before they could make an arrest. And that evidence would come from an unexpected source. Emil himself. Or rather, his digital footprint. The internet.
Ditch your phones if you are going to commit crime.
It's so true.
Come on, guys.
Yeah. In today's world, our electronic devices often reveal more than we realize or intend. As investigators examined Emil's phone and computer records, they uncovered a pattern of activity that painted a picture of a man who was leading a double life. In the weeks leading up to Victoria's jump, Emil had been engaged in multiple extramarital affairs. Because one isn't enough.
Or if you're married happily, one is too many.
So true. God, it's so true. He was still seeing his ex-wife Carly while simultaneously using casual sex sites and hiring sex workers.
Hell yeah. Dude's testosterone is through the roof.
Like, that's... I don't know. At what point do you say it's problematic? I think this is the point where it's problematic. More significantly, he had started a serious relationship with an Austrian skydiving instructor named Stephanie Guler, whom he had met on Tinder during an army skiing trip. This fucker is so cliche.
It'd be like that.
Text messages between Emil and Stephanie revealed a man planning for a future without his wife. He had told Stephanie that his marriage to Victoria was effectively over, and that the newborn baby wasn't even his. He was just being kind by taking care of Victoria during her pregnancy. Oh, that is some shit. That's horrible.
I was also kind to my wife during her pregnancy.
You know what this reminds me of? This reminds me when people are cheating on their significant other and they post pictures of either their partner's dog or the shared dog and make it out to be their dog only. Terrible. Don't use kids. Don't use the dogs as a prop in your extramarital shenanigans.
Maybe a guinea pig, but...
That is where I draw the line. Anything past guinea pig. Inappropriate. I'm
going to go snap some pictures real quick.
Shut up. Don't. Oh, man. We have a guinea pig. They're terrible. Don't recommend. So cute. Poop constantly.
You
That's
love
all they
the
do.
guinea pig more than you love me.
Oh, I do love that guinea pig. In one particularly telling message sent in January of 2015, Emil had written to Stephanie, quote, "From April onwards, I can do random and spontaneous," end quote. Zach, this would suggest that Emil anticipated a significant life change.
In April.
In April.
Yeah. You know, after this exact date at this exact time, I'm going to be able to do whatever I want.
I'm basically just going to be free. What was the month of Victoria's jump, if we recall?
I forgot. Was it March?
It was April.
Oh, was it April?
It was April. This
I wasn't sure if it was
uncreative, cliche motherfucker essentially announced to police that, hey, in April, I'm going to do something really sketchy. Then he did it.
You know what? Respect the hustle. The man follows through.
Oh, my God. What really stunned the investigators was a search they found on Emil's computer.
How to disable a parachute.
The amount, oh my gosh. For any of our listeners out here who also dabble in the true crime, you probably also crack up every time you listen to a true crime podcast and they talk about the search history, because it is the funniest freaking thing. Clear your history, folks. Clear your history.
Open up an incognito
Incognito. How dumb do we need to be?
I know they exist. I actually don't know how to open an incognito tab.
Zach could never murder me with the internet because he doesn't know how to use it. Okay.
Here's my dumb thing that police will be able to search.
What?
I have access to your car all the time.
What's that mean?
Sabotage.
What are you going to cut my brake line?
Sabotage.
Catch my car on fire?
Hard to say. It's hard to catch it on fire with you in it.
I feel like you could create a little puncture in a fuel line, and there are ways. I'm sure there are ways. We're not going to give people ideas, but...
Genuinely, it'd be hard for your car to catch on fire with a fuel leak because all of your fuel leads on the left side of your car and your turbo and exhaust stuff is on the right side of your car.
Great.
Scam.
Damn. Just days before Victoria's jump, he had searched online for wet nurses. And no, folks, that's not a weird porn thing. That is a woman who breastfeeds newborn babies.
I was going to say that that's a ridiculous thing to have to explain, but then I remember I have friends, and when I got a vasectomy, the lack of knowledge.
They thought that you just had basically cut your entire penis off. They were like, can you still get an erection?
I had one friend, God bless him, and I love him to death, and he is so smart, but this makes him sound terrible. And he's like, so can you still come?
Oh, God. I love that we have the little explicit warning on our podcast because I'm keeping all of that in because it's so funny. Okay. All right. Zach, you and the listeners might agree that searching for a wet nurse when you have a wife who's already breastfeeding your baby seems pretty fucking sketchy. Emil's behavior following Victoria's accident was
sketchy.
Detached.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was sketchy. His demeanor was described by those who encountered him as cold and uninterested. He seemed more concerned with his own inconvenience.
Now I have to take days off of work and watch these kids myself.
Than with the gravity of what had happened. Poor Emil.
Yeah, but you know what happened? Gravity. Ooh. Damn. Come on, that's funny.
The picture emerging was of a man leading multiple lives, presenting himself as a devoted family man while engaging in numerous affairs, accumulating massive debts, and ultimately plotting something unthinkable. As the investigation continued, detectives learned of another parachuting case with eerie similarities. In August of 2006, a 37-year-old experienced skydiver named Stephen Hilder had fallen to his death when both his main and reserve parachutes failed to open during a jump at Hibaldstow Airfield in North Lincolnshire. The investigation into Hilder's death revealed that both parachutes had been deliberately sabotaged. The straps had been cut almost all the way through, causing them to snap under pressure. Initially treated as murder, the case took a surprising turn when DNA evidence found on the equipment matched Hilder himself, leading investigators to conclude that it was likely a suicide. So there was no other DNA found on this particular piece that ended up failing or snapping.
I always question that. Maybe they're right, but it's like somebody saying, oh, we found your fingerprints on the sky. It's like, yeah, motherfucker, I own the gun. Why wouldn't my fingerprints be on it?
That's fair. That's fair. Maybe someday we'll cover that story and we can tear that one apart and see what we think. Okay. Investigators also looked at a case from Belgium that had made international headlines. Now, I am not going to go too deep into this because we actually already have this case written, and I think this is the case that I'm either going to do with my cousin or my sister. But You know about this case, actually, because we listened to a podcast episode on this together. But this case is really crazy. But it basically was another sabotage-esque situation of a skydiver who died because somebody tampered with their equipment. But that one is crazy, so we'll get into it later. While these cases provided valuable context, there was no direct links to Victoria's situation. The investigation remained focused on those with motive and opportunity to harm her specifically. Meanwhile, forensic analysis. Oh, we love a good forensic situation here. Forensic analysis of the gas leak incident at Victoria's home provided a crucial breakthrough. Remember how there was dried blood? It was his.
He cut himself trying to loosen it.
Yup. More importantly, tool mark analysis showed that somebody had deliberately loosened the nut on the gas valve using a specific pair of pliers. These same distinct tool marks matched a pair of adjustable pliers found in Emil's belongings. This timing was also significant. Emil had decided to spend that night at the army barracks, claiming that he wanted to avoid morning traffic, an explanation that made little sense given normal traffic patterns. It meant that Victoria and the children would have been alone inside of the house that would have exploded from a gas leak. His children. If you want to kill your wife, that's a real shit thing to do, and you shouldn't do that. If you want to kill your children, you belong in Dante's fucking Inferno. That's horrible.
It's easy to add 2 counts of attempted murder there.
So fucked. Look, my kid drives me nuts. I think both of us agree. But
she drives you nuts. I agree. I'm on board.
But she is also the light of our life. And if anybody even looks at her sideways, I puff up like a mama chicken.
A mama chicken.
I get all fluffy and balled up. This new evidence suggested not 1, but 2 murder attempts within a single week. The methodical nature of these attempts pointed to somebody willing to try multiple approaches to eliminate Victoria.
Whatever it takes.
Yeah, so I guess if at first you don't succeed.
Don't not never give up.
Well, the good news, Zach, is that with this actual DNA evidence, with the really sketchy messages, the case against Emil was building. However, prosecutors were concerned about whether they had enough hard evidence to really prove intent and to go for a conviction because, trying people twice. Whoa, does Europe have double jeopardy? I just realized that.
You have to introduce new evidence.
How'd you know that? Okay, so they also have double jeopardy. Okay, fascinating. I think even with new evidence, you still can't try them again.
It has to be labeled as
a different crime or a different court system. So there are times where if you're charged at a federal level, but if you were serving in the army, then you could be charged under the military court for the same crime.
Yeah, you could be thrown in the brig, cutting potatoes for the rest of your life.
Okay. Much of this evidence was circumstantial. They had the digital footprint, they had a little bit of forensic evidence, but the actual evidence pertaining to the skydiving incident was still very circumstantial. And they faced a significant challenge. Would a jury be convinced beyond reasonable doubt? After months of gathering evidence, the police were finally ready to make an arrest. In September 2015, which, think about, this just happened in April. This is a very quick turnaround. These cops were working.
Benson would have never tolerated that turnaround time.
I heard you do a bum earlier, and I do appreciate that. All right, Emil Cilliers was charged with 2 counts of attempted murder, 1 for the gas leak and 1 for the parachute sabotage. But the path to justice would prove to be as twisted as the lines of Victoria's sabotaged parachute, with unexpected challenges that would test the resolve of investigators and prosecutors alike. 2 years after the fateful jump, the case finally came to trial. The prosecution presented a narrative of a man trapped in a marriage he wanted to escape, motivated by financial gain and the promise of a new life with a new woman. What a piece of shit. Okay. Emil pleaded not guilty to all charges. This man's got some iron balls. His defense argued that there was no direct evidence linking him to the sabotage of the parachute. There was no fingerprints, no DNA, and no witnesses who saw him tamper with the equipment.
Because he was in a bathroom with a child.
They suggested that the parachute could have been damaged by someone else, or that Victoria herself might have somehow made an error during her jump. But then came a moment that would change everything. The prosecution announced that they had a key witness, somebody who could testify about the impact of Emil's actions, somebody who had experienced this betrayal firsthand.
I knew it. He had done this before.
Against all odds, against every expectation of survival from a 100 mile per hour impact with the ground, Victoria Cilliers was alive and ready to testify.
You go, girl.
That's right, Zach. The woman who had plummeted 4,000 feet from an airplane to the ground had survived.
See, and they say I can't jump off the peak of the house. What? Yeah, I can. Come on, it's fine.
This is crazy. And honestly, the impact of this should have been instantly fatal. This is a crazy
It's
thing.
probably not this, but when you said, as you described it, when she fell into a freshly plowed field, I'm just like, maybe the extra soft dirt caught her like a gentle cloud. Was it that?
The issue with doing this podcast with somebody as smart as Zach is that it's really hard to trick him. Yeah.
I was unsure, but it popped into my head almost immediately.
Damn it, Zach. Yes. When James Rankin reached her broken body in the freshly plowed field, expecting to find a corpse, Victoria was still breathing. Albeit barely, but she was breathing.
She was fucked up.
Yes. The paramedics who arrived with body bags instead found themselves treating a patient whose injuries were catastrophic, but not immediately fatal. Let's talk about what happened to Victoria. She sustained a broken pelvis, fractured spine, broken ribs, a collapsed lung. Not insane.
No. She left the body imprint in the ground like Wile E. Coyote and climbed out and said, I'm gonna fuck this dude up.
Incredibly and miraculously, she was alive. The soft, freshly turned earth of the plowed field had likely saved her life, absorbing enough of the impact to prevent instant death.
From now on, as soon as I have an inkling, I'm just going to say it, and then you can be upset that the podcast is ruined from like minute 4.
Love that. That'll be really fun for me. For weeks, Victoria hovered between life and death in the hospital, fighting to survive injuries that very few people could endure. The physical recovery would be grueling. Learning to walk again, enduring multiple surgeries, months of painful rehabilitation. But perhaps even more difficult was the psychological recovery, because as Victoria lay in that hospital bed, slowly healing from wounds that should have killed her, she had no idea that her own husband had been the one who put her there.
It's fair, yeah.
When police first informed Victoria that they suspected foul play in her accident, she refused to believe it. He wouldn't do that, she told them firmly. He's the father of my children. This reaction might seem surprising, but it's actually very common in victims of coercive control, which is a form of domestic abuse where the perpetrator uses patterns of behavior to dominate their partner through isolation, gaslighting, financial control, and emotional manipulation, which we heard earlier is how friends described Emil and their particular relationship. Friends and family described how Victoria had gradually lost confidence over the course of her marriage, becoming increasingly dependent on Emil despite his frequent absences and his very obvious lies. The vibrant, self-assured Army captain and skydiving instructor had been slowly replaced by a woman who doubted her own perceptions and instincts. Poor Victoria. It was tough.
It do be.
In a stunning twist during the trial, Victoria, still under Emil's psychological influence, retracted some of her earlier statements. She claimed she might have exaggerated the time that Emil spent in the bathroom with the parachute, and even suggested that she might have tampered with the gas pipe herself. The prosecution's case seemed to be unraveling before their eyes. This phenomenon is unfortunately very common in cases of domestic abuse. Victims often return to their abusers or they defend them, caught in this complex psychological web of fear, love, dependency, manipulation. Anybody who has watched Law & Order SVU is probably familiar with this, but it happens in real life. Victoria, despite being nearly killed, was still emotionally tethered to the man that she had married and the father of her children. With a key witness essentially recanting, the first trial ended with a hung jury. Some jurors convinced of Emil's guilt and others harboring reasonable doubt. But prosecutors were determined to try again, believing that Victoria was a victim of coercive control who was still unable to accept the truth about her husband. All right, second trial. You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. First trial went poorly.
Not real poorly, because they didn't find him innocent. Could have been
That's
worse.
true. So true. They get another shot.
Yep.
So much for one shot. 2 shots. 2 opportunities.
To throw this man in prison.
In the second trial, presented additional evidence of Emil's character, including his extensive history of infidelity and financial deception. You know, sometimes this isn't allowed because they make the argument that it'll bias the jury, but I think that they were able to make a case that this pretty clearly was correlated to the crime itself. They methodically dismantled the defense's alternative theories, demonstrating through expert testimony that the sabotage required specific knowledge of parachute equipment that very few people would possess. Slowly, the full picture emerged of a calculated plan to eliminate Victoria for financial gain and freedom from family obligations. After 6 weeks of testimony, woof, the jury retired to consider the verdict.
He's guilty.
Is that what you're going to guess?
Yeah, I would guess so.
Okay. After nearly 3 days of deliberation, the jury returned. That's a long deliberation, period. The courtroom fell silent as the verdict was read. Guilty on both counts of attempted murder. The culprit, all along, had been Emil Cilliers, Victoria's own husband and the father of her children. He had methodically plotted to kill his wife, first by tampering with the gas valve in their home, then by sabotaging her parachute when the first attempt failed. Emil showed no emotion as the verdict was read, because he's a nutcase. The judge didn't mince words at sentencing. Quote, This was wicked offending of extreme gravity. Your 2 attempts to murder your wife were planned and carried out in cold blood for your own selfish purposes. End quote.
Hereby sentence you to 75,000 years in prison.
He was sentenced to life in prison,
Yeah.
with a minimum term of 18 years. Victoria, let's talk about her recovery. Victoria's recovery was both physical and psychological. People can probably guess. And in many ways, the psychological healing was the more difficult journey. For years, she struggled to accept the truth about the man that she had loved so deeply.
How many times did she go visit him in prison?
She continued to visit Emil in prison, maintained contact with him, unable to fully break the emotional bonds, despite knowing what he had done.
I was just going to say, don't justify for your partners. If they do bad things, don't come up with excuses for them. Oh, he had a lot going on. He was so stressed. I did something wrong. That shit happens all the time.
Yes, constantly. Yeah, and this is a really extreme case because he tried to murder her. Pretty wild. The physical recovery was also grueling. Victoria had to learn to walk. She had to endure multiple surgeries and months of painful rehabilitation. The woman who had once leapt fearlessly from aircraft now faced the challenge of simply standing up unassisted. But Victoria's resilience, the same quality that had helped her survive a fall that should have been fatal, served her well in recovery. Step by painful step, she rebuilt her strength and her life. In a documentary on UK's Channel 4, Victoria finally acknowledged publicly what had taken years to accept privately, that she believed Emil had tried to kill her. When asked how she felt about Emil hearing this from her, she simply said, "The truth hurts." In what might be the most powerful testament to her spirit, Victoria went skydiving again.
Atta girl.
She didn't want the jump that almost killed her to be her final experience with something that she loved so deeply. She completed a tandem jump with a friend, describing it as freeing and the ultimate escapism. That jump went perfectly, and Victoria has since retired from the sport. Today, Victoria continues to rebuild her life with her children, transforming a story of betrayal into one of survival and resilience. Her case helped bring greater public awareness to the reality of coercive control in relationships, leading to broader recognition of this form of abuse in the UK legal system. The case of Victoria Cilliers reminds us that sometimes the greatest danger isn't the obvious risk. It's not the act of jumping from a plane at 4,000 feet that posed the real threat to Victoria's life. Rather, it was the person that she trusted most in the world, the one who should have been protecting her, who instead calculated how to use her passion against her in the most deadly way imaginable. In skydiving, the ground is always the ultimate danger, a reality that every jumper acknowledges each time they step out of an aircraft. But for Victoria, the true threat wasn't below her. It was beside her, in the form of a husband whose smile masked calculation and whose words of encouragement concealed deadly intent. Her story is really a stark reminder that sometimes the most dangerous falls aren't from thousands of feet in the air. They're from the heights of trust when someone's love betrays us.
Love.
Love.
What's love
Got to do with it.
got to do with it?
Got to do with it.
What's love
Got to
but
do
second-hand emotion?
Motion. All right, Zach, that is our story for today. Our first skydiving story. Won't be our last, but it is our first.
I'm glad we ended on song together.
Me too.
You just keep on bonding with me at the end of these shows, postponing me loosening a gas line.
Wow.
We don't have a gas stove.
No, we
Doesn't
don't.
work the same.
Okay. Zach, did you enjoy this episode?
I did enjoy this episode. I love being right from the very beginning. I live for it.
Cute. Folks, if you also were right and you enjoyed this episode, please go ahead and subscribe, leave us a comment, tell a friend, etc., etc. We are on Instagram at Final Boarding Call Pod. We are on Facebook. We have a Final Boarding Call podcast discussion group, and we would love to hear from you. Make suggestions of future episodes, etc., etc. And finally, join us next time when we will be exploring another transportation disaster story. When are you going to tell me a story?
I've offered so many times. I don't want to hear that shit from you.
I think it would be really cool. Until then, remember to stow your tray tables, fasten your seatbelts, and prepare for the unexpected, because not every trip reaches its final destination.
Goodbye. Butchered it.
Oh, goodbye.
Picture this.
No!